What's the best promo budget to promote a new release on Spotify? I tested it, and in this video, I'm going to show you the results. Hey, it's John here at Hyped It. If you follow my channel, you know that I love promoting my music on Spotify using music ads on Facebook and Instagram. These ads are incredibly successful in getting my music in front of a diehard audience that already loves the style and the sound and the genre of music that I make. The only thing that's missing is they've never heard of me, but the moment they see the ad and discover my music, it's so easy for them to come over to Spotify and not only check out my music, but become repeat listeners and fans and followers. This works like magic, but one of the questions that comes up over and over again is, John, what should be the budget for my campaigns? And so for the longest time, what I shared is that I launch all of my campaigns at a daily budget of $5 a day. I found this to be great balance between being an affordable amount that I'd be able to invest on a daily basis, and at the same time getting enough listeners and streams on Spotify and building enough positive momentum for my music to be picked up by Discover Weekly and Release Radar and Spotify Radio to a point where now I'm getting the majority of all my listeners and streams from Spotify for free, just from algorithmic playlists and repeat listeners that saved my music. So if you ask me, this just works. But I'm not the only artist in our Hyped It community that experiments with these campaigns and with budgets. We have incredibly talented music artists and music marketers in our community who try different things and challenge each other's assumptions. And so one of the questions that I've seen come up over and over again is this question. Hey John, if I launch my campaigns with a budget higher than $5 a day, wouldn't my campaigns learn faster and give you much better results much faster? And I think it's such a great question that I decided to put it to the test. So when my latest release came out, I decided to run a campaign not at $5 a day, but at $20 a day. I spent 4 times the daily budget to see what difference this will have on the success of my campaign. And now that I've run this for 28 days, the results are in, and I'm excited to share it with you. To look at the numbers, let's hop over to my screen. I'm in Spotify for Artists right now, and what I open up are 4 of my most recent releases. The first one here is Harlem House. Harlem House was released on November 2nd, 2023. Then I took a little bit of a break over the holidays, came back in January here on January 18 with I Feel It. And then I've been going every 2 weeks. So we have January 18, then I Wanna Love You came out on February 1st, and then All Night came out on February 15. Now, the reason why I picked those 4 releases is A, because they are the 4 most recent releases where I have 28 days of data so that I can really compare the first 28 days for each of these releases and how they did. And the second reason why I picked this is because Harlem House, I Feel It, and I Wanna Love You all ran with a $5 a day advertisement budget using Hyped It's ad automation. But for All Night, I tested a $20 a day budget. So what I want to find out now is what benefit did I get from spending 4 times as much money every day for this song? So let's take it from the top, starting with Harlem House. In Spotify for Artists here, I set a custom date range to look at the first 28 days of the release. So this is from November 2nd when the song came out all the way through November 29th. And you can see here how the streams trickled in over those 4 weeks. And you can see that the total number of streams that I got for this song was 8,142. Then we have I Feel It. I Feel It got 8,956 streams over the first 28 days. Again, I used a custom date range here to look at the numbers from January 18 through February 14. And then we have I Wanna Love You, which got 7,774 streams over its first 28 days. So this has been remarkably consistent. All of these tracks came in somewhere around like 8,000 to 9,000 streams, I'd say. But now let's look at All Night. All Night came in at 12,418 streams over those first 28 days. And you can see what that looks like here. So I got a little bit of a bump up relative to the usual number of streams that I'm getting over the first 28 days of my releases. But it really was about a 50% boost, not a 4 times boost that would have been proportionate to the extra budget that I spent. But in order to truly compare this, I want to dive a little bit deeper because there are a few things that happen different with All Night than they did with the other songs. So if you look at Harlem House here, you see that the biggest spike in streams happened right at the beginning, which is the Release Radar bump. And then as that passed, the number of streams per day stayed relatively stable. Now let's look at I Feel It. And it's somewhat of a similar picture. We got the Release release radar bump here. It stabilizes, and then here at the end we're getting another bump, which I don't know exactly what caused it. It could be Spotify Radio driving more streams to the song. If it was Discover Weekly, I would have really expected that spike to happen on a Monday, not on a Tuesday. But clearly something happened here at the end of this 4-week period. And then now let's look at I Wanna Love You. Similar situation. We have a bump here on Friday, release radar. We have another bump here on Monday. Not 100% sure what caused this. That certainly wasn't Discover Weekly. That would have been too early, and then the numbers stabilized. But this curve does look different for All Night, because All Night came up with somewhat of a release radar bump in the beginning, but the greatest bump here was about 2 weeks in, on March 1st on a Monday, and that was definitely Discover Weekly. Now, I will say that this is early for my releases. Most of my releases get featured on Discover Weekly about 4 weeks after release day. And for All Night, it happened in half the time. And it does make some sense because the higher budget led to a higher amount of streams, which could lead to a higher popularity score and therefore a faster pickup on Discover Weekly. But then what's a little bit surprising here, that this didn't repeat next Monday, right? So you actually see the Monday after this is almost one of the lowest number of streams over this entire 28-day period. So while I'm excited for this early pickup on Discover Weekly, it's not that this caused a breakthrough where now every Monday it created a new spike. And so with the way these numbers have been going, and All Night it's just 28 days old, so I don't have more data. I have to wait longer in order to see how this plays out over a longer period of time. But this doesn't look like that the early pickup on Discover Weekly set this track on a completely different growth trajectory where I'd say now it blows up because of the higher budget and the earlier pickup on Discover Weekly. So now that was the first difference I want to point out, but there's another difference that I wanted to share. Next to Spotify for Artists, I also looked at the Hyped It analytics for all of these tracks. And one of the metrics that I always pay a lot of attention to is the engagement rate, which is essentially the number of link clicks divided by the number of visits. Most of the time, this metric is a great indicator of how the ad campaign is going and driving results over to Spotify. The higher the engagement rate, the bigger the results on Spotify. So I wanted to see whether the 4 times higher budget for All Night had an impact on the engagement rate for that campaign. So first, I look at Harlem House, again, the first 28 days from the day of the release. And the red line is the line that represents the engagement. And you can see that it starts out low and then it gets better and better. And it looks like about, middle of this timeline, so about 2 weeks in, it hovers up and down around sort of the 40% line. It's never going to be level. It's always going to be a little bit zigzag, but I'm trying to sort of see the point where it generally moves sideways and doesn't show a huge trend up or down. And so here I would say that's probably about like 2 weeks in. Now let's look at the next one. This is for I Feel It. And here we have a similar pattern. Engagement starts out low, which is typical. It's always expected that the initial days of the campaign have the lowest engagement because this is where the learning starts. And then it goes up and up and up. And this one here is actually fascinating because it looks like it's still on an upward trend. So this hasn't even stabilized yet. So I would say after 4 weeks, this campaign is still waiting to find its plateau for the engagement rate. Now up next we have I Wanna Love You, another campaign with a $5 a day budget. And here again, the engagement rate grows over about 2 weeks. And this is when I would say it's stabilized, with most of the daily engagement coming in somewhere between 40 and 60%. And now let's compare this to All Night with a $20 a day budget. So if I scroll down and look at the engagement rate here, it is noticeable that the improvement period is a lot faster. So this track is coming out of the gate, and I would say less of a week in, it has already found its stabilized level. Again, somewhere between 40 and 60% here. And so I would say that is definitely a noticeable impact on the higher budget. There appears to be an effect of faster learning. And if you think about it, it does make sense because the learning is all based on data. And with a higher budget, Facebook's able to deliver the ad more often. So the ad gets more impressions, it gets more visits, it gets more clicks. So data is accumulating faster, allowing for faster optimization of the campaign. And so in summary, I would say, did I get more streams for a 4 times higher ad campaign budget over the first 28 days? The answer is yes, but the additional streams I got were just about 50% more compared to what I get for my other campaigns that all ran on a $5 a day budget. budget. And even though I did get picked up by Discover Weekly faster than on my regular campaigns, it isn't something that significantly changed the trajectory of the track, where I would say this is now getting a lot more streams and a lot more listeners from the algorithm compared to my other campaigns. So if I have to make a decision on my next release on whether I start it with $5 a day or $20 a day, then my conclusion right now is I'm going to go back to $5 a day. I just can't rationalize spending a 4 times higher budget when I only see about 50% increase in streams. $5 a day is where I feel most comfortable. I see my tracks being featured by Release Radar, Discover Weekly, and radio in substantial ways based on this budget, and release after release after release. So it does work, and that's why I'm going to stick to the minimum budget for my campaigns for the first 28 days. And this is usually the point where I then compare campaigns, I pick the winners, and I scale up the winners. So I will go above a $5 a day budget, but only when a campaign has stabilized and has proven to be a winner. What I like about this is that in the long run, it gives me the biggest results for my budget, because it keeps the budget low in the beginning of a campaign when it's still learning and not optimized yet. And it shifts the budget towards the back end when the campaign has found its perfect audience and can get the most listeners and streams and fans for every dollar invested. Now, some of you might be watching this and wondering, John, couldn't there be a situation where a higher budget is actually worth it? And I would say yes. I can see one situation where a higher budget makes sense. And to me, this comes down to the engagement. What fascinates me is that this higher budget led to rapid optimization of the campaign and a lot faster increase in the engagement rate relative to all my other campaigns that have been running at a $5 a day budget. So I would say, if you are new to these types of campaigns, maybe you just created a Facebook ad account and you have a new pixel, or again, you have a pixel that might be old, but you haven't used it in a long time, which means that your Facebook ad account and your pixel don't know much about the fans and the audience that loves your music. It needs a lot of data in order to find the perfect dream fans that just can't wait to come over to Spotify and check out your music the moment they discover your ads. That is when I can see a higher budget giving you the benefit of faster results. Not necessarily bigger results, but faster results. And that's because you're generating more data for the algorithm to optimize faster. So if you're new to promoting your music with Facebook and Instagram ads, you have a new Facebook ad account, you have a new Facebook pixel, you want results fast, and you have a budget that is higher than $5 a day, then that could be a situation where I would agree and say, okay, there could be a benefit to going above the minimum of $5 a day in the early stages of a campaign. And if you have a season ad account with a season pixel that has seen thousands and thousands of conversions and already has a pretty good handle on the types of fans in the audience that loves your music, then sticking to the minimum of $5 a day seems perfectly reasonable to me. And that's what I'll continue to do now that I've completed this experiment. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell icon below so you can get more videos like this on YouTube about how to get more listeners and streams and fans for your music on Spotify. And if one of your main goals right now is to get a lot more listeners and streams and fans for your music on Spotify, and you're looking for one of the easiest and fastest way to do this, then check out this next clip right here. Want to get your music heard on Spotify with AI? I just launched a brand new video training program called the Spotify Growth Switch, where I show you how to start growing real listeners, real fans, and real streams on Spotify in less than 10 minutes using software and AI. I've used the Spotify Growth Switch system to now grow my music to over 7 million streams and tens of thousands of monthly listeners on Spotify. This works for any music genre. It gets you real fans and listeners super fast, and it's extremely easy to set up, literally just like flipping a spotlight switch for your music. Despite using AI, you don't need to know nothing about tech stuff in order to be successful with this. I've had the tremendous privilege of helping multiple tens of thousands of music artists grow their music on Spotify, many of which have grown to much larger numbers, lots more listeners, lots more streams than I have using the systems that I've taught. Makes me so proud of their success. And so if you want to get more real listeners, real fans, and real streams for your music fast using state-of-the-art software and AI, then click the link below this video and check out the Spotify Growth Switch. I can't wait to help you grow your music on Spotify, and I look forward to seeing you on the inside.